Hello everyone. So today we'll be looking at the poem Song by Alan Lewis. You will find this on page 180 from Songs of Ourselves. If not, you can follow all the annotations from the cieliterature.com website. So what is this poem about? Right. This poem takes us back to World War II, when Alan Lewis was actually a soldier fighting in the war. He, at this point, crossed from the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean, and while on the journey, the ship was diverted to help survivors of a submarine attack. Lewis was a witness, and he wrote this poem dedicating it to a soldier and to his lover. The poem is presented from the perspective of a lover waiting for her partner. We will begin by analyzing the first stanza. The first month of his absence, I was numb and sick, and where he'd left his promise, life did not turn or kick. The seed of love was sick. If you look at the second line, we notice that there is a first person pronoun. I was numb and sick. This is the voice of the lover, the young girl who has been missing her absent soldier. And the personal pronoun here, it really emphasizes on the physical and emotional pain that she feels. She feels numb, which indicates that she is lifeless and there is no movement within her. And where he'd left his promise, life did not turn or kick. The seed of love was sick. It is somehow made clear that she is pregnant. The seed could be a metaphor or a metaphorical description of the seed growing inside of her. He has left his promise, and that promise is a sign of his love, which is the pregnancy. However, it also says life did not turn or kick, which obviously indicates that there is no physical movement happening in her body. So the baby is not moving around. It could possibly mean that this is just the first month of her pregnancy, and obviously she's not going to feel anything or any movement. Then we go on to the second stanza. The second month, my eyes were sunk in the darkness of despair, and my bed was like a grave, and his ghost was lying there, and my heart was sick with care. The opening of the second stanza begins with the month, the second month. This could indicate that she's in the second month of her pregnancy. But her eyes were sunk in the darkness of despair. The darkness of despair is a plosive. Plosives are repetition of D sounds. It somehow creates a very disturbing and bitter effect, and we can almost feel her pain. It creates also a powerful image of how intense her pain is without her husband or her soldier next to her. The darkness could be metaphorical of being in loneliness and being scared. She goes on to say, and my bed was like a grave. This is a simile, and we can see that the simile creates an image again of emptiness and death. She has no idea where her soldier or her lover is, and she feels a sense of emptiness, and she says, my heart was sick with care, and his ghost was lying there. Okay, he no longer seems to be existing anymore. We go on to the third stanza. The third month of his going, I thought I heard him say, our course deflected slightly on a 32nd day. The tempest blew his words away. So now the third stanza could also indicate the third month of her pregnancy. I thought I heard him say, it's almost as if she's becoming delusional, but she also hears the sound of him. Maybe it's in her dream, maybe it's in her thoughts. And he says, our course deflected, which means he was obviously in the ship, and the ship had deflected. On the 32nd day, the tempest blew his words away. The tempest is the storm, okay? And we have an image of destruction. And it is obvious that by the third stanza, he has died on the 32nd day. which could be obviously the 32nd day of him leaving, but also the 32nd day of her pregnancy. We go on to the 4th stanza. And he was lost among the waves. His ship rolled helpless in the sea. The 4th month of his voyage, he shouted grievously, "Beloved, do not think of me." We already now have an indication that he is dead. He was lost, which is a definitive statement, and there is a loss of hope. With him being lost, there is also a loss of love, loss of romance, and loss of relationship, and he's lost amongst the waves. So it tells us that he can never be found again. He's buried in the sea. And this is in the 4th month, in the 4th stanza, where he is dead. And he tells her, "Beloved, do not think of me." It means that he is completely gone, but it could also indicate that she has lost her baby as well. Because with his absence, she's maybe lost her baby because of stress, or she miscarried. So the first 4 stanzas, what we notice is that there's an image of loss and emptiness, and this lover feeling a sense of grievance because she has not got her lover next to her. We then go on to the last 3 stanzas, and we notice how the stanzas change in tone. The 5th stanza begins, "The flying fish like kingfisher skim the sea's bewildered crests. The whales blow steaming fountains, the seagulls have no nest, where my lover sways and rests." Now, as we know, soldiers are always brought back and they are laid to rest. Here we know that he is lost in the seas. Yet there isn't a destructive or a very brutal image presented. Actually, it's quite smooth. There's a repetition of alliteration and the S sounds. It creates a complete change in tone, and as if he is now resting in peace. And the images of sea, it conjures images of peace and tranquility. We then go on to the next stanza, which is the 6th stanza. "We never thought to buy and sell this life that blooms or withers in the leaf, and I'll not stir, so he sleeps well, though cell by cell the coral reef builds an eternity of grief." This is a very strong metaphorical representation of life. She talks about how she will not stir, so she will not grieve, so that his soul can rest in peace. Because in reality, his death has only brought him relief and peace. He is no longer struggling in the war. He is no longer in threat of dying. He's already dead. But then she says, "Though cell by cell the coral reef builds an eternity of grief." She will not grieve, but the coral reef, the sea, will grieve for him. And coral reefs, they conjure images of beauty, and it also shows the depth of her love that is going to remain eternal, but she will let go. But then suddenly we have another change in tone in a final stanza. She says, "But oh, the drag and dullness of myself, the turning seasons wither in my head. All this slowness, all this hardness, the nearness that is waiting in my bed, the gradual self-effacement of the dead." The language becomes very intense. There's a repetition of slowness, nearness, hardness, and you can say that's assonance. And this reveals how she's struggling to get over his death, because at the end of the day, he is dead, but she's still alive and she is still grieving. Not only has she lost her lover, but she also lost the one promise that he left her, which was her baby. And by the final stanza, the lover has lost her soul with the death of her soldier. Her body is stationed and she is just simply waiting for death. In terms of the form and structure of the poem, you could say that each stanza is a representation of the length of time the woman waits for her lover. And the first 4 stanzas could be a representation of her pregnancy and the first 4 months of her pregnancy. By the end, we already know that she has lost her baby. The final aspects to consider are the themes. The main themes we see in this poem is struggle, death or the loss of a loved one, love, war, and hope and faith.